He nudges your hand again. Soft, warm, an insistence that feels almost apologetic. The room is the kind you know by memory. Late afternoon light pooling on the rug, the kettle hissing faintly in the kitchen, the familiar smell of leather and grass that lingers on his fur. You look down, meet his eyes, and for a moment everything narrows to that single, gentle prod. It seems small, almost tender, and yet it carries a grammar all its own, a language you've been half-hearing your whole life. Imagine that nudge not as interruption but as a sentence. Sometimes it reads, "I want you. Call me back to your lap." Sometimes it says, "There's a rumble in my stomach," or "Can we go outside?" Other times it's, "I smelled something scary and I need to know you're near." Most of us answer that sentence the same way we always have: pick up, praise, give, because it works in the moment. That momentary relief is the consequence of a choice we made long ago, the small reinforcement that wrote the next page in our routines. Over weeks and years, those gentle prods can become a pattern, an expectation, a quiet negotiation we didn't mean to strike. You can feel the pattern like a muscle memory. You reach, he presses, you pause, he nudges again. But patterns are not fate. There is a subtle artistry to shifting them. The first time you try something different, it will feel strange and a little brave, like pausing mid-sentence in an old conversation. Notice the context, the air in the room, the time of day, whether the walk was short, whether his brain has been bored, and then calmly offer a single short task. Ask him to sit, to wait. Let that tiny request become the bridge between his need and your response. When you follow with what truly makes sense, not automatic consolation, not indulgent habit, but the thing that actually answers his sentence, the nudges start to clarify. They stop being demands and become messages. There is a quiet surprise hidden in all this. Many dogs push with their noses more on days when their minds are empty. A stuffed toy, a scent game, a new route can change the tone of those nudges within days. If this resonates, tap like softly and tell me in the comments what your dog asks for most. Subscribe if you want to keep decoding this language together. Next, we'll trace the first of those 6 common requests and the small change that can shift everything between you. He nudges your hand again, softer this time, and the afternoon light through the curtains catches the dust motes like a small constellation. There's a story behind that touch. Not a demand shouted, but a sentence offered. Sometimes it is plain. You open the pantry, his nose appears, urgent and precise, asking for food. Other times it's the gentle, repetitive prod on the couch at twilight, a request for connection, a wish to be seen after a long day. Picture the kitchen scene. You, riffling through containers, saying, "Not now," while his eyes follow, then that single insistent poke as if to translate longing into fact. Cause and consequence live together in these moments. If every nudge after the pantry yields a treat, that nose quickly becomes a bell. The behavior strengthens, carved by repetition into expectation. If you soothe him after a thunderclap by scooping him up, his nudge the next storm is not just comfort-seeking but a learned map back to safety. Once, on a rainy night, a young woman whispered into her Labrador's wet fur, "It's okay." And for months after, a small nuzzle at every rain cloud reignited that calm. But the opposite happens, too. A hand that pats after each insignificant poke teaches dependence, and soon your life is curated around answering the nose. There are subtler causes. Discomfort, a hidden ache, an itchy ear, dental pain, can look like persistent nudging. The dog is saying, in the only vocabulary he has, "Something's off," or the message is simply energy. A day without novelty can make a calm dog insist on movement, his nose a metronome demanding release. And then there's the accidental reinforcement, the momentary glance that tells him he's understood, which binds repetition to expectation. Listen to the room with me. The quiet of a living room, the hum of evening traffic, the way your dog's paw shifts as he presses his nose against your leg. Each context changes the meaning. If this resonates, tap the like, and tell me in the comments, what does your dog usually ask for when he nudges you? Stay with me. Next, I'll show a simple, humane response that turns those nudges into clear signals instead of constant demands. You feel the soft pressure at your shin and look down. Sunlight slants across the kitchen floor, Dust motes drift like a small private storm, and his eyes are steady, patient and insistently kind. A memory surfaces. Yesterday you stood up at the same queue and offered a treat because you were tired and the moment felt harmless. That small, sensible kindness became a lesson. He learned that a nudge is an efficient language. 'Cause you answered. Consequence. He nudges again, a policy reinforced by repetition and warmth. Think of habits as quiet contracts signed in gestures. When you respond immediately every time, you teach urgency. When you allow every nudge to deliver what he seeks, you build dependency. The opposite is true, too. A gentle, consistent alternative response rewrites the contract. I've watched owners trade a flurry of obligation for a single, calm interaction by changing the rhythm. Notice, ask for one short task, then give what truly makes sense. Notice the context. Is it dinner time? Did a thunderclap just roll through? Did you skip a walk? If it's hunger, a bowl. If it's fear, a reassuring touch and a quiet space. If it's boredom, a filled toy or a scent game. Say the word sit, wait 2 heartbeats, and then honor the right outcome. That brief pause is a hinge moment. It breaks the immediacy that fuels nudging and teaches that calm behavior has predictable rewards. It's not punishment. It's clarity. Over days you'll see the causal chain reverse, less demanding touch, more composed requests. Surprise often hides in the mundane. Many dogs push more on days when their minds have nothing to forage. A stuffed toy with hidden kibble, a scent trail in the backyard, or a new walking route stimulates curiosity and drains excess insistence within a few days. If this resonates, give it a small like. Little feedback keeps this conversation alive. Tell me in the comments, what's your dog's most persistent nudge? In the next section, we'll rehearse the exact words, timing, and tiny gestures you can practice tonight to change a habit for good. The lamp casts a warm pool of light on the kitchen floor as rain taps the window. Your dog pads over and presses his nose to your hand. Again, there's a familiar softness to the gesture, but beneath it lies a history. Yesterday you laughed and gave him treats. Last week you moved slower after a thunderstorm and soothed him with a stroll. The day before, you reached down and stroked him while scrolling your phone. Small, well-meaning responses accumulate into a pattern, and patterns become expectation. That is the cause. The consequence is a language your dog learns to use because it works. Imagine the same scene rewritten. He nudges. You look down with calm, meet his eyes and say, in a steady voice, sit. Your hand remains at your side. He hesitates, then shifts his weight, places his rump on the tile. You pause, a short, deliberate wait, then offer what makes sense. A leash for a walk, a bowl if it's mealtime, or simply a quiet minute of eye contact and a scratch behind the ears. By inserting one small task, you interrupt the automatic loop of attention grab, and you teach that requests have shape and patience has reward. Consequence changes. The nudges become signals, clear and intentional, rather than nagging demands. Not every nudge comes from misbehavior. Sometimes it's fear, thunder, a sudden noise, when his eyes are wide and his body leans into you like a question. Sometimes it's discomfort, a tucked tail or a whine, and your job is to notice the nuance. Sometimes it's boredom, the same route, the same toys, an empty mind that asks for stimulation. Add scent games, a stuffed toy to roll under the couch, a novel path through the neighborhood, and notice how the frequency of nudging drops within days. The cause dissolves, and consequence is relief for both of you. There's grace in this work, a gentle boundary that teaches, and a generous offer that responds. If this scenario sounds familiar, like the feeling of being softly petitioned day after day, tell me, what's your biggest question about your dog's nudges? If you found this helpful, a small like helps others find it too. And if you want to keep unraveling your dog's inner world with me, consider subscribing. In the next section, we'll walk through 3 exact phrases and hand signals to use in those moments, simple, humane tools that rewire the pattern in a week. The sun slants through the kitchen window and he presses his cold nose against your shin again. Soft, persistent, expectant. You used to bend, scratch behind the ear, give the quick reward that made the moment pleasant for both of you. Over weeks, that quickness became a pattern. One nudge, one rub, another nudge. What felt like tenderness was, in fact, a conversation shaped by consequences. Dogs learn not in theory but in consequence. A response repeated becomes a rule in their world. Think of the many small cause and effect loops you live inside. A child who cries and is immediately picked up will cry first, then learn alternatives. A partner who answers every midnight text trains midnight messages. Your dog is no different. When every nudge has once brought the desired attention or a walk, that nudge grows bolder, more frequent, like a tide returning to a shore it knows will yield. The psychology is simple and humane. Behavior that produces what the animal wants will be repeated. Intermittent rewards, sometimes you give, sometimes you don't, often produce the most tenacious nudging. It's why we see persistence after a day of little mental stimulation. Unmet needs morph into more insistent signals. Now imagine altering the geometry of that exchange. Instead of reflexive giving, you pause, observe the context, the clock, the walk last night, the strange noise that might have unsettled him, then offer one concise task, a calm request he can succeed at, and then decide what makes sense. Sit, you say gently. He plants his paws, breathes, and in that tiny interval the world restructures. The human no longer acts as a vending machine for attention. The dog learns that quiet communication and a short cooperative act lead to clarity, not confusion. The consequence of this small change is cumulative. Within days, the nudges lose their sharp insistence and return to being warm invitations rather than demands. You'll find him content with a puzzle toy on afternoons you can't walk, or diverted by a new scent trail that satisfies his curiosity. Anxiety after a loud noise softens because you provide a predictable ritual. Sit, settle, reassurance, rather than inconsistent rescue. These are not tricks. They are invitations to rewiring a relationship. Tell me, what does your dog's nudge usually mean at your house? Drop that question below. Your experience helps us decode more of this quiet language. If you want the practical 3-step method demonstrated, stay with me for the final part, where I'll walk you through it, step by careful step. The sun has slid low and the kitchen light casts a soft pool around your feet. He nudges your hand again, gentle, patient, a familiar punctuation in the quiet of the evening. You look down, meet that earnest gaze, and for a beat everything slows. A tiny negotiation between two beings who have lived 1,000 small compromises. This is where cause and consequence meet. That nudge is not just a whim. It is a sentence in a longer conversation you have been writing together for months or years. Remember the first time you gave in without a question. The first treat after a nudge, the leash clipped quickly when he tapped the door, the extra pet when he pressed his nose into your palm. Those choices taught him a pattern. Pressing earns response. Over time, the pattern became a script, sometimes helpful, sometimes a request for things you cannot or should not give. But patterns can be rewritten. Notice the context. Is it hunger, boredom, fear after a thunderclap, or simply an excess of restless energy? Ask the simple question and you will hear a clearer answer. Try this, pause, breathe, offer one short task, sit, wait, and make it a calm cathedral of expectation rather than a courtroom of denial. Sit, you say, soft but steady. He complies. You hold the moment a little longer, then respond with what truly fits. A bowl of water, a brisk 10-minute walk, a favorite toy filled with scent and puzzle, or the quiet reassurance of a hand on his side. That small ritual prevents dependence without removing care. It teaches patience and preserves the dignity of both of you. I have watched nudges fall away like autumn leaves when minds are fed. A stuffed toy that crinkles, a scent trail along a new route, 5 minutes of search and find in the yard. Within days, the constant tapping softens into occasional, meaningful communication. And the unexpected lesson is this. The more you enrich his mind, the more his nudges become deliberate invitations rather than default demands. So tonight, when the nose finds your knee, listen with curiosity instead of reflex. Respond with a short, steady boundary, then with generosity that fits the need. If this landed with you, leave a quiet like, and tell me in the comments. What is the most puzzling nudge your dog gives you? Subscribe if you want more gentle translations of the everyday language between you. Let's keep listening together.